enthusiasts, how you doing? Welcome back to part 39 of the Project ERA build. I hope you're all well, and it's great to be back. I'm back down in Mark's workshop helping him out with the ERA. So obviously everything that's been going on in the world around COVID has prevented me from going down there, but we're at the stage now where I can go down and finally give Mark a hand. It's been extremely frustrating for both ends. Been frustrating for Mark, frustrating for me. So Mark's kept in regular contact, been texting me, asking me for help, and I get frustrated about it because sometimes I just want to be there. I want to get hands on. I want to have my tools, my test equipment to be able to carry out some checks on the car. And when you're trying to do it over text, it's really difficult and frustrating. So anyway, we got to the point I could finally go down there and help Mark. So it was great for me to see the ERA. It's the first time I'd seen it for a long time. And yeah, help Mark get it running. But we had some issues, as you might have seen from the intro. Doesn't always go to plan. I know a lot of the videos, and I think the Sprout video and videos I've done in the past, genuinely pretty much when you turn the key is when the car goes. But we struggled a bit with the ERA. It wasn't as straightforward as that, and that's just because it's a complicated car. The wiring, the fuel system is different from a standard Mini, and it's just a little bit more tricky. And it's one of those things, if I was down there helping Mark rebuild it, I would have picked up on a little bits as we've gone through the build, but we couldn't do that. So credit to Mark, he's got it to the point where it's all pretty much back together and almost ready to turn the key. So there were just some gremlins that I had to go down there and help Mark out with. The main one really was around the fuel and oil pressure system. So the ERA is quite unique like that, in that the oil pressure system controls the fuel pump, so it will not switch on the fuel pump until the engine has oil pressure, and that's a built-in safety feature. So if you're ever to lose oil pressure, basically the fuel pump would cut out. And same if you were in an accident or something like that and you're in a big crash, the fuel pump would stop delivery of fuel to the engine. So it's a bit of a safety feature in the event of a crash, and if there's an oil pressure problem with the engine itself. Of course, that adds its own problems or its own kind of technical difficulties in that the way the ERA is wired, so you have to be careful. It's not the same as a standard Mini, it's varied slightly. So when ERA built the ERA Turbo Mini, it started out as a standard Mini, so it would have started out as a standard loom, standard electrical wiring loom, and they've modified it to suit the ERA. So they didn't make massive differences to the loom, but there were a few small differences which are key that you have to get right, obviously, when rebuilding it. And this is where the problems lie. Because the car's done 260,000 miles, it's been restored several times in the past and had lots of work done on it over the years. Various bits of the wiring have been changed, and I think it was difficult to prove exactly, but I think maybe what's happened in the past is someone's fitted a wrong oil pressure switch and they've changed the wiring to suit that oil pressure switch, because the oil pressure switch works the opposite way round to what is the standard. So if you fit the wrong oil pressure switch, the fuel pump won't run. So you've either got to fit the right oil pressure switch or change the wiring, and I think someone had changed the wiring in the past. There are also some issues around. Mark found, obviously, there was a wire out the ignition switch which had been cut and was missing. I think that had probably been done for an alarm or immobiliser system in the past. So basically what Mark done was buy a brand new Mini wiring loom, sent it off to Wired by Wilson with the existing ERA wiring loom, and David Wilson adapted the loom, copying the loom that was in the car. So the problem there is, if anyone had changed it over the years, it would have meant David would have wired it for the loom that was in the car rather than a standard ERA, so we were building it to standard. So when it come to looking at the wiring diagrams and that, there was a wire on the fuel pump that wasn't quite right, so did turn into a bit of a head scratcher, had me going for a bit. It's one of those sort of things where I'd love to, you know, ideally just spend my time with it, sleep on it a few nights, but obviously pressure was on down at Marks and I needed to get to the bottom of it. And in the end it was pretty simple. It was just one wire which went to the fuel pump relay, which was basically just not wired the right way around. So pretty simple to correct, but not simple to diagnose in the first place. Typically it's like that with all electrics. Very simple to fix the problem, find the problem takes the time. So at the moment, just looking for the oil light to go out and to see positive oil pressure. And all looking good. So got a bit of a splatter there, so it's not far off.
Ready? Yeah. What's it doing? It won't rev.
So we were nearly there. The knocking noise you could hear there was no oil in the dashpot, so the dashpot was bouncing up and down. But basically the engine wouldn't rev. You held the throttle, it wouldn't do anything, but it kind of would idle. So didn't take much sorting out, to be honest. It was just a case of the timing was a mile out on it, which I think we assumed it had probably been set as a sort of standard static setting, but it didn't look like it had been anyway. We did also notice Mark saw a small leak from the oil cooler, so just had to check the pipes there. I think one of the pipes was just loose, it hadn't been tightened up, but it's one of those things when you build a car, lots of little bits you need to check afterwards, things get overlooked. We did actually find that there was no gear shift oil seal in it as well, so I'm not sure whether it had not had one fitted or it had fallen out when the gear lever had been moved about, but anyway, didn't take long too long to sort out. So I strongly suspected the timing was out. I did ask Mark, and we just assumed it was set into like a static timing position. But you can see me just there with my left hand on the distributor, just advancing the timing a little bit, and then obviously it allowed it to rev. So yeah, no big issues to be honest. Just needed the timing set up. Ian Hargreaves, who built the engine from Avonbar, has promised to come down and help us tune the engine when we first get it running properly. So following this week's work, Mark's going to contact Ian and see if he can get him down just to kind of give the engine a bit of a tweak and a tune. Obviously at some stage we'll take it down, give it a proper rolling road tune, but just to get the sort of base settings there. Very good of Ian to offer to come down and help get it set up. So there we go, it's running. It doesn't sound too bad. Like I say, it's just really base setting at the moment. This sort of era in technology car takes quite a lot of setting up, and as I've mentioned earlier, you really do want to rolling road tune it. You really can make a big difference on a rolling road with something like this, where you've got a carburetor and a distributor ignition system. It's all about the setup, especially when it's turboed as well, and you can get some massive gains by getting it set up properly. So already had a chat with Mark, and I think at some stage, once it's all built, it's all ready to go on the road, Mark will get it rolling road tuned. Like I say, this wasn't a walk in the park here, and we did have issues as we went along. So first one, like I say, is there was no gear shift oil seal in it. I'm kind of struggling to believe Ian would have left it out, but there were problems with the gear lever itself. So the remote box, the linkage underneath where the ball and socket go into the remote, had come dislodged, so it was throwing the gear lever too far. So I'm not trying to understand whether maybe the gear shift oil has come out, or maybe it wasn't fitted originally, but quite a simple fix obviously to put one in. But believe it or not, Mark has pretty much a whole Mini in spares, but he didn't have a gear shift oil seal. Trying to think what else there was, but I don't think there was much else. But the wiring was extremely frustrating. You've seen me got the dashboard out here, so we couldn't get any of the gauges to work properly. And again, it's slightly frustrating for me because I'm sort of looking at this having not been involved in it for the last few months. So a lot of the work Mark has done I've not seen. Couldn't get, none of the gauges would work. Mark had fitted LED bulbs in all of the gauges, and I'd noticed looking at the way they were wired that they shared a common earth. And for a moment I thought that maybe because the way LEDs work, they're only let current flow in one direction. The fact that they shared a common earth, whether if maybe one of the LED bulbs was the wrong way round, that could then prevent an earth getting to the rest of the bulbs, or maybe another gauge. But so I went back and fitted standard bulbs, tried it, didn't make any difference. But it is one of those sort of things, certainly own preference. If I'm doing a build, it's better to start off making sure it works with the standard equipment before you go modifying stuff. So lesson learned there a little bit, I think, but I say that wasn't causing the problems. The actual problem was caused by all the gauges went off to VDO to be refurbished, and for whatever reason, when you looked at the layout of the old gauges, so pretty simple, they have a positive, they have a negative, and they have a signal wire, and they're lined up from, I guess, left to right, whichever way you're looking at it, positive, signal, negative. And when the gauges have been restored, they were positive, negative signal, so they were wired up the other way round. So literally just had to go round the wiring plugs for all the gauges and just change the harness pins around. It was a simple fix, but it took a long time to find out what the problem was. So thanks for tuning in this week. We're coming to the end of the video now. Sorry I missed Sunday. I was actually on holiday, but plenty more ERA footage coming up soon.